Yo guys, what up, what up? It's the Tominator here, and in this one today, we're finally going to be taking a look back at the infamous 1997 Mr. Olympia. This is one of the most controversial outcomes in IFBB history. But was it really as bad as everyone seems to say? Did Nasser El Sonbaty truly get robbed? Or did Dorian Yates, perhaps, do enough to deserve it after all? Many people today act like Yates wasn't even in the running on account of all his injuries, with the undersized arms and blocky waist and whatnot. They immediately discount him because he wasn't at his best and he looked downright poor in certain poses. But the truth was, he was still lights out from the back, and even a subpar Dorian Yates is still a formidable opponent for anyone. So, in the interest of being as fair and comprehensive as possible, I've compiled a bunch of picture comparisons and also some video footage from the prejudging so we can see how it all went down. Now, it seems that a lot of you guys believe that video is inherently better than pictures when it comes to judging a bodybuilding contest. And yeah, this makes sense at face value because all things being equal, of course video is going to be better. It gives you more of a sense of how they move and hold poses, whereas still photos can be misleading if you happen to catch a guy when he's transitioning or otherwise not fully tensing. But it really boils down to resolution. I mean, what do you think would be more valuable? A fuzzy ass video at 240p or a set of clear HD photos? I think the answer is obvious, and incidentally, I found this to be true for this year's 2018 Mr. Olympia when comparing the pics to the live stream footage, where Phil Heath's conditioning became much more evident in the pictures as opposed to the video. But anyway, I digress. The point is that video is not always better, and this may be the case here as well, as Dorian arguably fares worse in this prejudging footage than in some of the better quality photos. So in this first call out, they featured Dorian, Nasser, and Paul Dillette. And Dillette must have faded, or else the judges changed their mind on him because he only ended up taking fifth. Both Sean Ray and Kevin Levrone placed ahead of him in third and fourth, respectively, and obviously Yates and Nasser went 1 and 2. And in the front double bye, wow, Dillette looks great. But it's a clear loss for Dorian. He pretty much loses this shot to everyone in the contest because of that torn left bicep and tricep, but we all know that, and it's just one pose. In the front lat spread, this is normally an automatic knockout for Yates, but Nasser's holding his own here. This one's really close. And Nasser's also one of the few guys who can rival Dorian's thickness from the side. So in the side chest, and of course we're not going to see him, but Dillette looks pretty good. Yeah, now that they're together, Yates isn't really hitting it, so hopefully we'll get a better look at that next time. Turning around, this is where Dorian makes up some ground, big time. Even at this stage, he still tended to dominate from the back. I mean, this is a back double biceps though, and he doesn't really have any biceps to speak of, but in terms of the back itself and the conditioning in the lower body, it's Yates all day. But Nasser actually looks pretty good here in the video, and I would probably give him a slight edge based on this footage. The rear lat spread is still a clear-cut victory for Dorian, however, and if the Christmas tree shot counted for anything, he'd be winning that too. But anyway, this pose and the front double are the two easiest shots to call. They represent the defending champ at his worst and at his best in this show. So turning to the side once again for the side tricep, this was likewise typically a very strong pose for Yates throughout his entire career, but it's not a total cakewalk for him this year. You might still give him a slight advantage, but one could argue that Nasser takes it on the basis of a tighter midsection and a thicker chest and shoulder. Dorian does have the mighty rear calf going for him, though. In the abdominals and thigh, they both got a great set of wheels, big thighs with nice separation and massive calves. But Nasser has the better abs, and Dorian's waist is blockier, so it's Nasser here for me. Hell, I'd probably go with Dillette over Dorian in this one because of the midsection once again. Okay, so they send those two back in line, and now we're going to get a second look, this time with Sean Ray in the middle. And starting in the back double biceps, it's clear as day that Sean is diced and showing the most detail, but he's simply getting overpowered out there. I mean, he looks like a midget standing between these two beefy behemoths. Still, it's a close call, and I might even have him ahead of Nasser just for conditioning's sake, but Dorian's simply too big and dense, so he wins it. Now, in the rear lat spread, the size disadvantage is too much for Ray, so he drops to third. Nasser almost has the mass to hang with Dorian, but the shadow is just too wide and hard for him, so Dorian takes that one. And as for the side triceps, let's wait until they get into it here. You know, frankly, I'm not crazy about Nasser's execution right there. I feel like he could showcase his arm a little better. I really like the way Sean hit it, but I didn't like Dorian at all there. His gut was sticking out past his chest, and the angle certainly wasn't doing him any favors, though. Lastly, in the ab and thigh, Dorian looks good through the legs, and even his abs aren't bad, but I still prefer the more streamlined look of Sean Ray, and I'd probably put Nasser in front. So based on the video, I'd really only have Dorian winning the 2 back poses and maybe the side triceps. He clearly loses the front double and the side chest and ab and thigh as well. Even his signature front lat spread is far from guaranteed this time around. So let's go through some photos now and take a closer look to confirm. From the front, Dorian's near his weakest here. Even he will admit he's not very good in the front relaxed pose. So discounting the fact that Nasser is out-angling him, El Sonbaty looks bigger and more polished. The midsection and legs are more defined, and it's just an obvious win here for him. Same thing for the finals. Dorian looks bloated with 2 small arms, and Nasser smokes him once again from the front. Dude, even the much smaller Sean Ray opens a can of whoop-ass on the champion here. Sean might be getting dwarfed, but his physique is so much more shapely and refined. Let's add Kevin Levrone into the mix too, just for shits and giggles. I think you get the point, but Dorian looks weak as hell standing relaxed from the front. It's easily his second worst pose after the front double biceps. But as for Kevin, he looked pretty good at this show. You can even perhaps make a case that he should have beaten Dorian too, because after all, he definitely had less flaws on the whole. Even Lee Priest for that matter. Lee looked terrific in 97. Look at those washboard abs and the crazy quad sweep he had going on. Plus the arms go without saying. The thing about it though is that lots of people look better than Dorian standing on their own. But you put them next to each other and suddenly things come into perspective a bit. Dorian's one of those bodybuilders who always excelled on the basis of mass and conditioning, 2 traits that aren't as immediately apparent until you get put into comparisons. Look at how he not only literally dwarfs Priest, but even makes the giant Dillette seem somehow slender and shallow. In fact, the rear relaxed might even be Dorian's strongest shot in the entire show. He was just absolutely destroying people in it. This might be my favorite picture of him right here. The lighting is perfect too, and that helps to highlight the edge he had over Nasser in terms of the conditioning. But from the best to the worst we go, and now in the front double, Yates looks like an utter joke. That mangled left arm isn't even the whole story. The right arm is also frankly terrible, and even Dorian's allegedly world-class forearms are being outmatched by Nasser's. His waistline's too thick and bloated as well. Now, you can say, oh, it's just 1 pose out of 7, because they didn't count the most muscular back then, or 11 then if you include the semi-relaxed shots. But the bottom line here for me is that it should not be possible to be crowned champion of the biggest bodybuilding show in the world with such an egregiously flawed physique. Dorian's front double bicep here may very well be the worst single pose of any Mr. Olympia in history. Even Ronnie's ab and thigh or Phil's front lat spread look positively respectable compared to this. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents though. Let's keep it moving. In the front lat spread, and Dorian's in trouble once again. Now, don't get me wrong, I know Yates is generally amazing in this pose. In fact, I'll admit that he's the best to ever do it, when he's at his best. But this year, Nasser had him beat fair and square. Look at the pecs, the shoulders, the legs, the arms go without saying. They're all bigger and fuller on Nasser El Sonbaty. So even if we give Dorian the nod on the lats themselves and a slight edge in conditioning, it's not enough. Nasser is simply more complete and powerful looking, and I wouldn't even hesitate to give him the W here based on this pick. Here's another look, and while Dorian fares better here, Nasser still beats him in most of the body parts. Structurally, he's just as wide as Dorian, so Yates can't simply out-muscle him like he does to most other competitors. It may be a rather startling upset, but Nasser takes the front lat spread quite handily. I also give him the side chest. This close-up allows us to see the size advantage of Nasser El Sonbaty. His chest is bigger and thicker than Yates. Dorian's primary pec, or the one near the camera, has an odd, almost triangular shape to it, whereas Nasser's has a nicer, full shape to it. Nasser also has better rear delts, a cleaner delt pec tie-in, bigger triceps and biceps, and a larger side leg that is essentially just as detailed. Here's a slightly more flattering look for Dorian, but Nasser still takes it. In terms of the lower body, they appear much closer from this angle, but upper body-wise, Nasser's obviously bigger and better and isn't giving up much, if anything, conditioning-wise either. In fact, if anything, Nasser gets the edge in that regard since he's the only one showing some abdominal definition. So it's another straightforward win for him there. So Nasser's won the first 3 poses rather convincingly in my estimation. But turning their backs to the audience, this is where Dorian will get his revenge. Because even at probably his all-time best, Nasser always looked soft and disappointing from the back. In contrast, we all know the deal with Dorian, the best back of all time along with Ronnie Coleman. Yates is harder and denser, his lats are a little wider, and his lower back is clearly superior. And the glutes and hamstrings are also more conditioned. The only things I'd give to Nasser are the arms, of course, and the shoulders, which look a bit rounder and more separated. Interestingly enough, in this picture, Nasser seems to stack up much better. Now his back looks less watery and more defined, and because of his bigger arms and more tapered waistline, he easily cuts the more impressive outline of the two. But Dorian is still thicker through the back and more conditioned through the lumbar region and the glutes. You do have to applaud Nasser's calves, though. He's one of the only men in history to be able to stand next to Yates and not get blown out of the water in the calf department. In fact, you could make the argument that Nasser's calves might actually even be a little better than Dorian's. They do look like they insert slightly lower. But anyway, let's have another look, this time from a different angle, and now we can tell beyond a shadow of a doubt that Dorian is just denser and in better condition from the back. Nasser's even out-angling them both, but he's not even in the running because his conditioning is not up to par. Sean Ray's hanging with Dorian conditioning-wise, but he simply doesn't have the size or thickness to match. One final glimpse confirms Dorian's dominance in the pose. Despite being at an off angle, that back is clearly in a league of its own. The only way he can possibly lose the back double is if you put more emphasis on the arms, but in my opinion, while Dorian's arms are very lackluster and his biceps almost non-existent, they are still big enough to get the job done here. And the rear lat spread is a landslide victory for him. At this point in his career, this was Dorian's best mandatory shot. This is almost as lopsided as the front double biceps, actually, except in this case, Nasser's on the receiving end. Not only is Yates' back considerably wider, but it's also more detailed. Look at the meaty lower traps in the center of his back, dude. And because the arms are virtually a non-factor here, Dorian takes this one in convincing fashion. Nasser seems to be leaning forward too much and rounding his back here, which is hurting him in two ways. First, it's not allowing him to properly showcase maximum lat flare, and secondly, it essentially erases all detail through the lower back. You can see guys, even today, making the same mistake. Hell, 2018 Mr. Olympia Sean Roden was guilty of it, too. Onto the side tricep, and this was another almost automatic win for Dorian in the past because even though he never had great arms, his triceps always looked incredible in this pose. That horseshoe-shaped lateral head was typically so crisp, and the way he pressed his arm into his massive lat made it look so thick and meaty. But here, I don't know, man. I prefer Nasser hands down on this shot. Admittedly, it's a crappy angle for Yates, but Nasser looks better in every single body part. But let's take another look. See, now it's more fair because both of them are at the correct angle, and now Dorian looks a whole lot better. Nasser, if anything, is opened up just a tad too much now because we can't fully see and appreciate his triceps like we could in that last pick. I think this one's extremely close. On the one hand, I prefer Dorian's stance showing off that honking cow below his knee there, and ordinarily he'd beat Nasser in this pose any day of the week. But this year, because of that bloated stomach and the downsized arms, he doesn't nail it like he used to. Dorian's pecs look very flat, and the midsection might actually be sticking out further than his chest now, which is a huge no-no. So yeah, even though I said Dorian probably takes this one based on the video, looking at the pictures, I'd reverse the placings and give Nasser the slight edge. I guess it's more or less a tie in my book. The ab and thigh, another formerly strong pose for Yates, also goes to Nasser this year. His abs are cleaner and more symmetrical, his waist is tighter, and as we've seen in previous poses, his quads are better as well. The only advantage Dorian's got over him is the lats, which flare out wider and give him a better taper through the upper body. But again, because Nasser's waist is a little smaller, that kinda cancels out Dorian's extra width. Here's one final look where the two of them are locked and loaded, and yeah, it's close, but Nasser takes it. He's a mass monster with basically an 8-pack. His thighs have more girth and sharper separation, and even his calves measure up well. So good luck beating that in a pose like the ab and thigh. So okay, based off the pictures, the final tally in terms of the 7 mandatories is Nasser 5, Dorian 2. Dorian really only wins the 2 back poses conclusively. Nasser easily beats him from the front. Well, the front lat spread was maybe debatable, but I'd still give that to him. And he also edges him out from the side. If we factor in the quarter turns, even though we didn't get to see the side relaxed poses, I wouldn't hesitate to bet Nasser wins them as well, especially given those are part of the symmetry round, and Nasser clearly had better symmetry when you consider all of Yates' torn muscles. So once again, Dorian would only win from the rear, bringing the total to 8-3 in favor of Nasser El Sonbaty. Alright, even if we were to extend an olive branch to Yates fans and say, okay, he takes the side tricep, and fine, let's just give him the front lat spread too. Nasser should still have come out on top 6-5. But honestly, screw the whole whoever takes the most poses is the winner approach. If you have no arms and a bloated waist, I don't care if you are the reigning 5-time champ, your ass is out of here, buddy. You don't deserve to win when half your body is mangled by torn muscles, period. The ideal Mr. Olympia candidate shouldn't merely be the biggest guy on stage with the grainiest conditioning and the best back, he should also have the fewest number of flaws. If we're just going to reward freaky mass monsters with great backs, then why the heck was Jean-Pierre Fuchs only 7th at this show? I mean, look at the guy, for Christ's sake. He's a beast. He's practically dwarfing Dorian, too. So let's have some consistency here from these judges. In my opinion, these placings were almost pure politics. Not in the sense that the IFBB rigged the competition or anything like that, but simply in the sense that the bodybuilders with the more decorated track records tended to receive heavy favoritism. Case in point is 9th place Ronnie Coleman, who is just starting to emerge as a major player and really come into his own here. Ronnie already had one of the best backs going and was one of the biggest guys out there for the past year or so, but still wasn't getting the respect he deserved from the judges. I mean, even at this stage, this was probably the second best back in the entire lineup. It was between him and Fuchs. So for Ronnie to not even get compared to Dorian and the others in the top 2 callouts is somewhat insulting. I'm not saying he deserved to win or anything crazy like that, but geez, at least give the guy a chance. So anyway, back to the original questions. Do I still consider the 1997 to be a robbery? Yes, absolutely. This in-depth analysis has only solidified my original opinion. So while Dorian wasn't as terrible as some select photos might have you believe, and while he was definitely more conditioned than Nasser and won some poses, overall Nasser won more poses, was better, and more complete, and I believe the rightful champion that night. Hell, if I was judging the show, I might have even been tempted to put an undersized Sean Ray in front of Dorian as well, because even though he was giving up a ton of size, there is no question that Ray was more balanced and detailed, and his conditioning was just about on the same level as that of Yates. So once again, are we evaluating these contests strictly by whoever wins the most compulsory poses? Or are we going by who displays the best combination of mass, definition, symmetry, proportion, and stage presence? If it's the latter, then holy crap, Dorian probably shouldn't have even made the top 5 because his symmetry and proportions were all out of whack as a result of all the injuries, and likewise his stage presence suffered this year due to some of the health concerns he was battling before the show, which severely compromised his preparation. In some rather illuminating interviews, which I'll link to in the description below, Dorian's admitted that not only did he tear his tricep just 3 weeks out to add to that left bicep he'd already torn back in '94, but he also received a blood transfusion at the hospital due to internal bleeding about 6 weeks before the contest. Supposedly this was caused by an anti-inflammatory he'd been overprescribed by his doctor for shoulder pain. So these issues made it so that he didn't even dare practice posing for the last couple of weeks, let alone lift weights in the gym for fear that he might further injure himself or tear another tendon. So it's no wonder the man showed up a shade of his former glory and without his usual assertiveness on stage. You can choose to view this as a sign of Dorian's greatness, that even in the face of all these seemingly insurmountable setbacks, he was still able to soldier on and prevail at the end of the day. And there is some merit to that point of view. But I see it more as a sign of the incompetency and possible corruption of the IFBB judging system. But anyway, guys, that's my take on the '97 Olympia. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did Nasser get robbed? Or did Dorian indeed deserve it despite being a far cry from his best? There's definitely arguments to be made for both sides, as I still think Yates had some incredibly impressive attributes and managed to work around his various injuries surprisingly well. So this wasn't meant to be a let's all bash Dorian type of video. I'm just a fan of bodybuilding, calling it how I see it. But thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. And until next time, I'm the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.